Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I watch a lot of a creator named Ali Abdaal. I really like a lot of his content, and recently he has been going on sort of a journey of self-discovery and mental health work, and it's really awesome to see. And in this video that he posted recently, he talks about some concepts that I think are really helpful and important, and I also think that I have some additional thoughts to sort of piggyback on based on what he's talking about. So I'm going to watch the video with y'all and just insert additional thoughts and comments as we sort of go along in the video.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a confession to make. My confession is that I did not want to film this video. In fact, a lot of the time when it comes to this YouTube channel that I've been running for the last 8 years, I have not wanted to hit record. I just don't want to do it, right? Like, there's just better things I could be doing with my time, right? Right now, I feel a bit tired, and I feel a bit like, oh, it's like the morning, and what's even the value of this video? There's no value to...
Okay, so the first thing that I want to say is that I think that the fact that a lot of the time when Ali sits down, he doesn't want to record a video is actually something that is immediately worth digging into. That it's like, oh, what is it about sitting down and recording a video that makes you not want to do it? He named one thing, which is that a lot of times he feels like he has better things to do. In which case, then I would ask the question, well then, why not do those things? And I imagine that the answer would probably boil down to some sort of should. The answer would probably boil down to, well, I have these responsibilities. I have a whole company that I'm taking care of that I have to be responsible for, etc. But something that Ali Abdaal talks about in a lot of his other videos is, well, I don't want YouTube to become just another job like medicine, because I left medicine to do a job that I love. So why make it feel like another day job? He doesn't want to do that anymore. It's not worth it anymore. And he's finding a way to sort of change tools, which is a really hard, terrifying process, because when you have used a tool your whole life and a tool has, been really helpful and successful for you, the thought of setting that tool down and picking up a different one that you're objectively going to be worse at because you haven't practiced using it yet is absolutely terrifying. And that is a huge part of the mental health journey. Okay, let's keep going.
5% of them, there are a handful of videos where I've been like, oh, I have something to share, and I think it's actually good, and I've spent ages preparing it, and I'm like, no one can possibly argue against it because I think it's good, and I'm gonna hit record, and then I'm just gonna do the thing. 1 in 20 times. For the other 19 and 20 times of me filming a video on this YouTube channel, which is a thing I've been doing about once or twice a week for the last 8 years, since 2017,
And one of the things that people talk about a lot is they're like, well, but when you're doing this every week, you're not going to be able to find inspiration every week. And I think that that is actually because they have a poor system set up. So if you want to be able to find inspiration every week, if you want to feel inspired and intuitive every week, then you need systems in place that allow you to do that. So for instance, one of the places that I constantly find inspiration is from my own clients, that as I work with clients, I will see patterns across various different clients that I can then draw on in order to share with people in the world. And I also have people like Ali Abdaal, that just the way that they talk and think and ideate about things really inspires me in a lot of ways and then helps me to create my own content. Today, quite literally.
every single week I've showed up and I filmed either 1 or 2 videos, sometimes even 3 back in the day. Every single time, 19 out of 20 times, 95% of the time, I feel like, I don't want to film this video. But I've been doing this shit for 8 years now, and even though I think I don't want to film the video, I hit record and I film the video anyway. What? How does that work? Some people will call this discipline. I've been reading Jocko Willink's wonderful book, Discipline Equals Freedom. It's a good book. It's really, really good. In my own book.
So real quick hot take. I think that discipline exists, but I don't think that it's what we think it is. I think that discipline is what I would call an emergent property, meaning that we look at somebody who, goes to the gym every day and we say, oh, they're disciplined. But there is no understanding of the underlying motivations for why that person goes to the gym every day. Maybe they have to go to the gym every day for health reasons. Maybe they're going to the gym every day because they hate themselves and are, punishing themselves and starving themselves and forcing themselves to, cut all sorts of things out of their diet and starving their body and all sorts of things. So there's all sorts of reasons that somebody might go to the gym every day, but all that we see are the external factors of them going to the gym consistently. And we say, oh, they're so disciplined. But if you actually want to be disciplined, the most important part are those underlying motivations. Why is it that you actually want to go to the gym every day? What is important to you about going to the gym every day? And when you ground yourself in those things, or recording a video every week, whatever the case, when you ground yourself in those things, it makes it so much easier to actually take the action, and the discipline emerges from taking those actions over and over and over and over again.
Like to sort of pew-pew the idea of discipline. I think, discipline is about forcing yourself to do the thing even though you don't feel like doing the thing. The thing is, I don't think it needs to be a forcing thing.
This is also where the idea of willpower comes in. That willpower, in my experience, working with people and personally, is a great nitrous boost. It's a great way to get yourself over the hump of inertia. It's like, okay, I just got to get into it. And then once you get into it, it feels okay. But if you are using, and it's great for that, but if you are using willpower as just a constant fuel source, where you're trying to carry yourself through your entire life through willpower, it's a recipe for burnout, depression, misery. It's just not a happy life, living your entire life through willpower.
I love hearing what is holding people back. I love hearing about the obstacles, because a lot of these obstacles are things that I also had to deal with. And a lot of them are obstacles I still continue to deal with to this day. And it makes me think that, like, oh, damn, I almost forgot that was an obstacle either I've already overcome, or I have just never mentioned that this is an obstacle that just sort of keeps on happening.
This is a beautiful example of Ali doing his own work, that, as he hears from people who he is helping, as he hears from his audience, he's also learning from his audience, which is definitely something that I experience as a coach, that in working with people, even though the relationship is a one-way street where I am there to help them and they have no obligation to help me in any way. In fact, if they do feel like they want to help me or want to take care of me, that's actually a problem that we have to address in session together. We have to sort of work through that together. But regardless, just through talking through things and coming up with these new ideas, it informs my life in so many different ways. And Ali is talking about the same thing. It's a beautiful thing.
At one of these events a couple weeks ago was something like, how do you stay consistent with stuff even when you don't feel like doing it? And relatedly, the same.
This comes back to that same thing that I was just talking about, that consistency comes from doing the things that are actually important to you over and over and over again, and consistency emerges out of that. It's a byproduct.
Person also asked the question that like, I'll start the thing and I'll do all of this overthinking about the thing. I'll feel like, oh, it's not good enough and it could be better, and then I'll spend more time wanting to prepare for the thing, and I'm just not doing the thing. Like, how do you deal with that? And what I said was, I also don't feel like doing the thing. I also overthink the thing. Like, I don't want to give you a method for how to deal with this. I mean, I can tell you what I do, and I'm going to tell you what I do in this video. But I want to make it clear that most people would look at me and see that this is some big, successful, rich YouTuber who's been doing this shit for a long time and is now financially free and blah, blah, blah. Like, depending on how long you've been following the channel and how much of my story you have followed. But like, most people think of me as someone who has got their shit together. And yet, I don't want to film this video. And I almost never want to film the video because I always feel it's not good enough. I always feel like there's no value to it.
Boom! That's it. Like, that's the juice. When he sits down to film a video, he always feels like it's not good enough. Honestly, I feel, if I'm remembering the video, I've watched this video before. If I'm remembering the video correctly, I think that he sort of glosses over this. I think he sort of moves on and talks a lot about this idea of the difference between action and emotion, which we'll get into in a second. But the fact that he just glosses, this is so huge. This is like the root of it. The reason that every time he sits down, and 19 out of 20 of his videos he doesn't want to record, is because he feels fundamentally like he's not good enough and like it needs to be better. And that is the thing to address, because if he can address that, if he can start to, untangle that thread, then sitting down to record videos won't be a problem anymore, because it'll be fun. It'll be a fun process because he'll be teaching people like he loves to do. Anyway, let's continue.
I always feel like, why would anyone want to hear the ramblings of some fucking guy Oh, there is always this mental and internal emotional barrier that holds me back from wanting to, from doing the thing. And it's weird, right? Because I know I want to do the thing, right? Like I know that my why behind making YouTube videos and my why behind doing these talks and my why behind like writing books and stuff like that is because I really enjoy sharing knowledge and being able to do so in a way that could potentially help some people, right?
So Ali Abdaal is in an unusual situation in that he actually knows his why. A lot of people don't know their why. A lot of people skip over that part and are just trying to sort of follow the railroad track that is set out before them. He knows his why, which is fantastic. Which means that it's even more important that for him it's the emotional component. It's the identity component of I'm not good enough. And if he were able to address that, then recording videos would be joyous.
I get it. Like, I have a clear why behind the thing. And I know that in order to have the impact that I want to have, and in order to have the financial freedom and time freedom that a business like this has afforded me through being relentlessly consistent on YouTube for the last 8 years, I know that the end result of the thing is what I want. I know that that's the life I want to live. But all of that stuff in the middle, all of that work, all of that like grappling with imposter syndrome and overthinking and all of this shit, like that is the work. That's like the hard part. And it continues to be the hard part. And the reason I wanted to make this video and kind of the answer I said to the guy at the event was like, I don't think it ever goes away. I don't think it ever goes away. And speaking of
this, I absolutely disagree with. I think that it for a lot of people, it doesn't go away. But I think that it can go away. Because I think that there are ways to process it's not like you're born thinking that you're not good enough. When you're born, you don't think about good enough at all. Good enough isn't even a concept in your head. You just exist. And then as you go throughout your life, you have these narratives written for you that teach you that you're not good enough in some way. And when you can start to recontextualize those narratives, you are able to start to grieve those parts of yourself and then reintegrate them in different ways. Keep parts of them that you want to keep and let go of parts that you don't, and find, oh, I'm actually really proud of myself. I think I actually do really amazing things. I mean, Ali Abdaal is such an extreme example. It's great because look at everything that he's achieved. He listed it off. He's this rich, brilliant, financially free YouTuber, etc. Left medicine, built his own YouTube empire, business, etc. And he still doesn't feel good enough. And so it just goes to show how no matter how much you achieve, it's never enough when there's that underlying root of not good enough.
I now know a lot of YouTubers who are very famous and very rich. They all kind of feel the same way. They almost never want to actually hit record and make the video because it could always be better. There could always be more value added to the video. There could always be more research that's done. Sometimes they're like,
This is so sad to me because I think that it's absolutely true. I've heard from many people that most large content creators are actually miserable. In fact, I've worked with some large content creators and can personally attest to the idea that most of them are miserable. And I think that it is because this stuff doesn't get addressed. And in fact, a lot of times content creation will exacerbate this stuff because there are so many metrics that you can measure yourself by. It's just a gold mine for the part of you that doesn't feel good enough to be like, yeah, look at how not good this is.
Video is a slight repetition of the video I made 3 years ago, and like one person in my audience is gonna have watched the video from 3 years ago, and then they're gonna go back through my history, they're gonna rewatch that video from 3 years ago, and then they're gonna leave a comment saying that like, bro is falling off because bro is repeating content. It's like, the video might get 100,000 views, but like that one guy, it's usually a guy, that one guy being like, oh, f you, you're repeating content. Why did you even make the video when you're just repeating yourself? It's like, never mind that, like, it got 100,000 views and loads of people found it useful, but there's always the one guy that's like, F you for repeating content that you, for repeating something that you said 3 years ago. I say so.
You see how savage the ego is? That, like you said, even though you have 100,000 views and are super successful, making lots of money off the video, that's not what the ego focuses on. The ego focuses on the one comment, the one negative comment.
A lot of writers, I would say even the vast majority that I've met, they say they don't really enjoy writing. They enjoy the feeling of having written. And the feeling of writing is almost like this painful thing that they kind of get through in order to get to the feeling of having written. At least at the start of the process. Usually they find that like, okay, at the start of the process, there's all this resistance, there's this blank page syndrome, there's the writer's block. And then once you get into it, then it's like, okay, now things start to flow a little bit more.
There it is. There's the willpower, overcoming inertia, and then getting into the flow. If the only reason that you are writing is so that you can have written, that is a recipe for burnout. It is wrought with disaster because it is all about the result. And if you are only doing things for results, then it's sort of like living a life where every week you're just waiting for the weekend. You are wasting away every week, Monday through Friday, just trying to get to the weekend. Whereas if you could find a way to enjoy Monday through Friday, it's a whole new world. Cue music.
I did not want to film this video. I did not want to film the video because what my mind was telling me was that there's going to be nothing valuable in this video for anyone. And the mind likes saying things like this, right? The mind, the little voice in our heads, it likes to tell us that we are useless. It likes to tell us that we are worthless. If you don't have that voice in your head telling you those things, congratulations, you're enlightened and stuff. I used to think I didn't.
Oh, this is so sad. This is so sad. So I think that, yeah, that voice absolutely exists for most people. And I think that having dialogue with that voice is really, really important. It's something that I talk about in a lot of my videos, that when that voice says you're useless, you're worthless, etc., digging into where it's coming from with that. It's really hard. Like if we externalize that voice and we think about it as a partner, for instance, a partner talks to us like that, we would leave that partner, right? But we can't leave that partner because it's us. And so then you think about a situation where, okay, you are in a situation with a person and you cannot leave. You're locked in a vault together and you have to learn to get along in order to get out of the vault. What would you do? And most people, you see this in movies all the time, right? It's two people that hate each other. They get stuck in a situation together and they start to listen to each other. They start to try to understand where the other person is coming from. And in doing so, they both sort of get on the same page and start working together. And that is the process of emotional empowerment and narrative navigation, which is two parts of my coaching process.
Have that voice. And then I took a course from a chap called Joe Hudson, who featured on the channel recently. It was like an in-person event thing. Part of it was writing down what the voice in your head says. And initially I was like, Joe, man, I don't think I have a voice in my head. And with a few prompts, I was like, holy shit, I actually do have a voice in my head. And I have had a voice in my head this entire time. That voice is the voice that says the video's not good enough. That's the voice that says we don't need to film this right now. That's a voice that says, what's the point anyway? It's a voice that says, the only reason you make...
By the way, just a quick note. Where that voice comes from is as we go throughout our lives, parts of us get frozen in time. And it is actually adaptive. The reason that happens is adaptive. It is trying to help and protect us. So the example that I often use is when you're driving down the road, you see all sorts of stuff on the road. That your consciousness is picking up all sorts of stuff. The lines on the road, nature, other cars, etc. But most of it goes in and out. It flows in and out of your consciousness, which is the way that our consciousness sort of naturally works. But then something happens like a car crash, for instance, and all of a sudden your consciousness focuses in on that car crash and holds it in your consciousness. It doesn't flow out in order to try to protect you. It's like, oh, there's danger here. We need to pay attention to this. And so what ends up happening is that, especially when we're young, because we are more impressionable and we don't know how to process emotions as well. Although, to be honest, people don't know how to process emotions well anyway. But regardless, when we are young and we don't know how to process our emotions, something will happen that makes us feel unsafe. And that part of us will get frozen in time, just like with the car crash, in order to try to protect us. That it's like, oh, we need to be really careful about this. So I would assume that in Ali Abdaal's life, there were instances where he needed to prove that he was good enough, whether implicit or explicit from people like parents, etc. And because of that, this part of him got internalized and frozen in time, that it was like, oh, I need to constantly be worrying about if I am good enough and proving that I am good enough in order to keep myself safe. And that's where those parts come from.
And also, it's not just the voice in your head, because those are your thoughts. You're also being held back by your feelings, not feeling like doing the thing. The voice in the head is going to tell you that you shouldn't do the thing because it'll be bad and worthless and people are going to laugh at you and all that shit, right? But then you have a feeling in response to the voice in your head, or maybe not, maybe in parallel to the voice in your head, a feeling of discomfort, a feeling of fear. Maybe it's not fear, maybe you won't call it fear. Maybe it's a feeling of like, just like a generalized bad sort of feeling.
Okay, so don't do this. So the generalized bad sort of feeling is actually what most people do. Most people say things like, I'm anxious, I feel weird, I feel uncomfortable. And these are vague general terms. And the problem is that when you are trying to form a relationship with this part of you to help heal this part of you, when you use vague generalized terms, that part of you doesn't feel heard and understood. They feel generalized, they feel dismissed. And so Ali Abdaal backed off of using the word fear because a lot of people don't want to admit that they're afraid, right? It's like, it's embarrassing. We're supposed to be big, strong, manly men. We're not supposed to be afraid of anything. But the problem is that when we back off of that, the fear ends up puppeteering us from the background, just like he's talking about. That when you sit down to record a YouTube video, it's just dread. You just don't want to do it. And so you can't stay consistent. But when you actually acknowledge that fear, hear it out, validate it, which, I have many a video. There'll be a video that'll pop up in the upper right that will talk about validation in detail. But when we actually validate it, then it has a chance to flow out like, our emotions naturally do as we're, driving through the road and experiencing all sorts of stuff, and it's just flowing in and out of us. When we validate it, it helps that part to flow.
Like a general discomfort with doing the thing. Why don't people like public speaking? Imagine yourself going up on stage and giving a talk in front of 1,000 people, unprepared. What's the feeling that comes up in your mind, and in your body, really? What's the feeling that comes up in your body when you, at the thought of going up and giving a talk in front of 1,000 people unprepared? Ooh.
Now, I do love this because what Ali Abdaal is doing is he's bringing a lot of people are not aware enough of their emotions to be able to name that. So, if somebody says, oh, I feel weird, and I say, well, what is it? What does weird mean? They'll say, I don't know. It's just weird. And then you can get into more detail about that by bringing it into the body. It's like, where do you feel it in your body? Do you feel it in your chest? Do you feel it in your stomach? Do you feel it in your head? Do you feel a little queasy in your head? And by bringing it into the body, it can help you to start to form more of a relationship with your emotions, become more aware of your emotions. And then you can use resources like a resource wheel, which, by the way, is a resource that I offer in my course. You can use resources like an emotion wheel to identify what resonates the most in terms of the word to assign to it.
That's like a kind of weird, sort of scary, kind of unpleasant kind of thing. Maybe for me, it's sort of around here, this sort of thing. That for me is similar to the feeling that gets triggered when I'm about to sit down to make a video, and it's like there's this, it's a sort of
tightness in the throat,
a little bit in the stomach,
yep,
in the sort of chest area.
Yep.
And previously, I was never aware of this feeling. It's only in the last year or two that I've started to really recognize that, oh, yeah, that thing has been there my whole life.
I'm so proud of him. Like, hearing him say, it's only been the last year or two that I've recognized this. This is what I'm talking about, that he's going on this journey of discovering himself and getting more in touch with his emotions. And it's really beautiful to see. A lot of his videos lately have been really sort of introspective like this. And it brings me so much joy to see him going through this journey. And also the vulnerability to share it, I think, is just incredible.
I used to think that I didn't feel feelings. I used to think that, like, oh, I'm a logical kind of guy. I don't let feelings hold me back from stuff.
Confession, I used to think the exact same thing. I remember when I first started going to therapy when I was a teenager, I told my therapist, oh, I don't have emotions. And the reason that I said that is because in the circumstances that I grew up in, a lot of times there wasn't room for my emotions. It was taken up by others whose emotions were bigger than mine. And so I didn't get a chance to feel and express my own emotions. And it was a whole journey for me of learning to get back in touch with my emotions.
But then it was like, I read a couple of books. I did this Joe Hudson stuff. I sort of listened to the Art of Accomplishment podcast. I started to get into the whole feelings thing. I did an ayahuasca retreat, which helped. I was like, oh, interesting. Like all of this stuff.
So quick note on hallucinogenics. Hallucinogenics are really interesting. There's actually some really promising research coming out about the efficacy of hallucinogenics on things like depression, anxiety, etc. The thing to be careful about with hallucinogenics, and I think that the reason that it's going to be hard for hallucinogenics to be any sort of official treatment for things like anxiety or depression, more widespread treatment, is because they are so dependent upon intention. So depending on the intention that you go into when you go on a trip of some kind or a dosing of some kind, it can completely affect your experience of the hallucinogenic and the effect that the hallucinogenic has on you. And there is a lot of really, really harmful stuff that hallucinogenics can do to your brain. And so it's something to be careful of. But that being said, I have also seen really, really amazing results from people talking to me about, retreats like he's talking about that they've gone on, and they have had revolutionary experiences. So just sort of a balanced take, both sides.
Helped me realize that actually I've been feeling the feelings my whole life. I just have not been aware that I was feeling the feelings, and I was allowing them to dictate my behavior, even though I wasn't.
Oh, beautiful. So beautiful. Yes, I've been feeling the feelings my whole life. I just wasn't aware of them, and so they were dictating my behavior. That is 90% of people. It's beautiful to hear that articulated. Beautiful. Mwah, chef's kiss.
And so I've always had this feeling of not wanting to film a video, of not wanting to put my hand up in class, of not wanting to sort of put myself out there. And I realized at a certain point that you're allowed to do a thing, even if you don't feel like doing it. And it's not about forcing it. It's actually not about forcing it. Okay, the forcing method is as follows. You've got the thoughts and the feelings, right? The thought is telling you don't do the thing because you suck. The feeling is a generalized, I don't want to do it, yeah, kind of.
It's fear of not being good enough is the specific emotion of what he's talking about.
What works for me most of the time, and the way I've started to think about it, because I've been thinking about how to explain this, is like, your hands, right? Hands. You got two hands, probably, if you're watching this, I suspect. Your left hand and your right hand, they could move in concert, right? They could move in synchrony. They could move at the same time, but they don't have to, right?
There's a beautiful, vulnerable, nervous energy as he starts talking about this, and it makes me really, really happy to see that this is just raw. This is just him trying to figure it out in the moment. It's beautiful.
Let's say I am in the middle of doing something very important, like, I don't know, back in the day when I had a real job, let's say I was assisting in an emergency cesarean section, and I am holding the woman's body, abdomen open, or pelvis open, so that the surgeon, like my boss, can like take the baby out and stuff. In that moment, I can still have the thought and the feeling of, I quite fancy a coffee right now. Feel a bit tired. Feel a bit decaffeinated. In that moment, when I'm elbows deep in a patient to assist in a cesarean section, what's my action going to be? Is my action going to be, sorry guys, I'm off to get a coffee? Obviously not. Obviously not. My action is like, well, I don't give a shit if I want to go get a coffee. My action is like, I'm going to hold the retractor while this baby comes out, right? The action does not have to correlate with the thought and the feeling. This
is beautiful. Actions don't have to correlate with thoughts and feelings. So I think that we so often conflate these two. It seems very obvious when you say it out of context. But when we go about our day-to-day lives, we constantly invalidate our thoughts and feelings because of the actions that are associated with them. So for instance, if I feel really angry and I, make a scene at a hospital room or something, then we invalidate ourselves, we beat ourselves up, we punish ourselves because of the action that we took, and we don't acknowledge the feelings at all. And so what ends up happening is that the feelings actually get worse, and it makes it more likely for you to do an action like that again. But as you start to actually validate the feelings separate from the actions, that it's like, okay, yes, this action was not okay. I should not have behaved that way. And this feeling still makes sense. I can still understand why that feeling came up in that moment because, I don't know, my wife was in surgery and I was horribly scared that something horrible was going to happen to her. And so I blew up. I got really, really angry. I lost my cool.
It's way harder to do when you are at home on your own. You have access to the internet. You have your phone in front of you. And you think, I don't feel like doing this thing right now. Why don't I go on Instagram Reels or TikTok or something to avoid this feeling that I'm trying to avoid feeling? And if the device...
Beautifully said. So you go on Instagram or TikTok because you're trying to avoid the feeling. And that's because it's uncomfortable. And we don't know how to deal with it because we're taught to just shove it down. And when we just shove it down, it feels so much better to just get away from it, to just avoid it somehow. And so we numb out with things like scrolling TikTok, scrolling Instagram, etc.
But the key insight that I found very helpful over the years is that it does not have to be that way. Just because I have the thought and the feeling of, I want to scroll Instagram right now, does not mean I have to scroll Instagram right now. It also doesn't mean that I shouldn't scroll Instagram. Like, I'm not saying that you should always do the opposite of what your thoughts tell you. Obviously, I'm not saying.
And it also, so if your thoughts and feelings are acting in synchrony, that's great. And if they're not, that is actually a really good indicator to investigate further. It's like, oh, that's interesting. My thoughts and feelings are not in alignment. Now, obviously, you're not always going to have time to do this in the moment. Coping mechanisms are there for a reason. So if you need to brute force your way through something so that you can get the important thing done, and then you go investigate it later, that's totally fine. The key is that you investigate it at all. It doesn't matter when you investigate it. But the problem is that a lot of times people will just brute force their way through it, and then they're like, well, now I don't have to deal with that anymore. And so then the issue gets worse. And so if your thoughts and feelings and actions are out of synchrony, it's a really, really good indication of like, oh, let me investigate that and see why my thoughts and feelings don't want to take this action that I'm trying to take. Because even the way that we're talking about it, you can hear that I'm talking about me, and then I'm talking about my thoughts, feelings, and actions, which indicates that there is a difference between me and my thoughts, feelings, and actions. And so by noticing this difference between you, like, oh, I want to take this action, but my thoughts and feelings are fighting against me and taking this action, then it becomes much easier to work with this part of you as a third party rather than trying to fight yourself every step of the way.
If you really ask yourself, like, what's the feeling of discomfort? The feeling of like, oh, I don't want to do this. Like, what is the feeling? A feeling is just like a set of internal sensations, internal bodily sensations. People who are sensitive or good at interoception feel those things stronger than other people who are less good at interoception or less good at, or people who are less sensitive. But either way, a feeling is an internal bodily sensation accompanied usually by some kind of story. We feel like that unpleasant feeling of something.
It just like, he's just talking about my coaching method. So it is an internal bodily sensation. This is emotional empowerment, right? It is getting to know your feelings, how they feel, what they are, what they're saying. And then the story that accompanies them, the narrative navigation of this story was written for me. And is it a story that I want to continue to write, or do I want to edit where the story is going and how the story is written?
What is an anxiety attack? An anxiety attack is a set of physical symptoms like and like pulse racing and like fingers getting kind of sticky and like a little bit of a tremor sometimes and all that kind of stuff, accompanied by a mental narrative which is usually afraid of something that hasn't happened yet. If it's fear directly is usually afraid of something that's happening right now. If you get a lion coming into the room and it's about to kill you, it's very natural to feel those kind of physical symptoms, and then we would interpret that as fear. But when it comes to anxiety generally is the fear that something bad might happen in the future. It hasn't happened yet, but we want to be vigilant against the threat that it might happen. But either way, these feelings and thoughts evolved to protect us and keep us safe in an environment that we no longer live in.
Okay, sort of. So half and half. So on the one hand, these feelings and thoughts evolved in order to protect us. Period. That is true. 100%. That's the purpose of them. In a world that we no longer live in, a lot of times, yes. So a lot of the ways that we react to our thoughts and feelings are for a world that we no longer live in. So for instance, cortisol is meant to be a short-term thing, right? It's meant to, a tiger is chasing you and you get away from it. And then for the next 24 hours, you want to be extra aware in case the tiger finds you again. So you sleep a little bit lighter, you're, more sensitive so that if you hear a twig snap, you can run away from the tiger again. But instead, now we live in a society where we are constantly pumped with cortisol because we're constantly thinking about, the rent that we have to pay at the end of the month, and we're not sure if we're going to be able to pay it. And that is maladaptive, right? That is no longer serving us, and our bodily system has not caught up. When we go through fight or flight, and all of the energy runs to our, blood? All the blood runs to our legs and arms so that we can fight or run away. A lot of times, the situations that we are afraid of now, we actually don't need that anymore, and it's actually working against us, because what we actually need is more blood to our brain so that we can think through issues, because now the things that we are afraid of are usually more intellectual. But I think that it's really important to not dismiss that our thoughts and feelings are there to protect us, period. If you can understand that, then all of a sudden, your emotions stop becoming a bug and they start becoming a feature, and you can work with them rather than against them.
But again, just because you don't feel like doing it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, or that you should do it. Either way, like, the whole point is that there's just no correlation between those two things. So what's the point of this video? The point of this video is, like, I'm enjoying myself now. If you're at this point in the video, maybe you can tell I'm actually having quite a lot of fun. This is vibey, right? Like,
He used willpower to overcome the inertia, and he found his flow.
every time I film a YouTube video, afterwards, I'm just like, holy shit, I'm actually drenched in sweat. If I do any kind of public speaking, any kind of workshop, any kind of event, again, people view me as someone who has their shit together, right? Like, you know, I've been on TV, I've been on Good Morning America, and I've done all these talks in front of these thousands of people about stuff. And every time I get absolutely freaking drenched with sweat, which is just kind of funny. Where was I going with this? Oh,
This is such a beautiful example of how our body sends us so many signals. Our body tells us so much. The fact that every time he does a presentation, every time he records the video, his body is drenched in sweat, that's his body trying to tell him something. And when we listen to those signals, when we try to understand where they're coming from, it can teach us so much about what it is that we're going through and how we can heal.
a lot of the resistance is in just getting started. And the reason I want to make this video is because I know there are people in my audience who want to live lives of freedom to live life on your own terms, kind of do what you want, not do things you don't want to do. Pretty much all of that is on the other side of doing hard things. Pretty much all of that is on the other side of doing things that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable.
And by the way, the reason that it feels so uncomfortable, I mean, in addition to all the sort of narratives that are written for us, the dissonance with our own emotions, all that stuff is probably the primary. But then I think that the thing that triggers all of those things is that if you want to find financial freedom, if you want to build your own business, like the kind of, things that he's talking about, it is going against the status quo, right? School, we're taught to be a cog in a machine, right? We're taught to work in a factory. And building your own business is taught as something that is not secure, it's risky, etc. And so you are going against the tribe, which is scary and against our natural biology. And so that's why we have this natural resistance to doing it.
It's very normal for it to feel uncomfortable. I suspect if you speak to professional musicians, I suspect if you speak to Ed Sheeran or Taylor Swift, they feel the fear before going on stage every time, even though they've done it hundreds to thousands of times. They feel the fear and they do it anyway because it's got to be done. The people who stay inconsistent with stuff, or who don't even...
So they feel the fear, but they do it anyway because it's got to be done. That speaks lightly to the last part of my coaching process, which is called Dharma design, which is the idea of intentionally crafting a life that is fulfilling for you. Because the idea of Dharma, it's some loose combination of the word of purpose and duty. And the idea is that when you think about, a kid runs into the street and a mother jumps in front of a car in order to protect her kid, that's an extremely scary thing to do. But in that moment, there's no second thought about it. She just does it. It is just what she does. It is just the thing to do. And when you can start to get aligned with that kind of dharma, that kind of purpose, duty, etc., life becomes thoughtless. Life becomes, it's not easy, but it is thoughtless. You just do the thing.
If you have a goal or a particular outcome or a particular dream that you're working towards, and one thing I enjoy doing is helping people achieve their dreams, live their dream life. Once you define what that is, and you realize that it's going to take work to get there, the work is the uncomfortable feeling. That's the work. That's the hard part.
The work is the uncomfortable feeling. I agree. And I think that the more you can understand those uncomfortable feelings, the easier the work is.
What if, this business that I start just starts to feel like my day job? And I was like, bro, it's always going to feel like work after a while. Even being an influencer making YouTube videos feels like work after a while.
And this is a great example of those red herrings that I was talking about. What if it starts to feel like my day job? Okay, like what if it starts to feel like your day job? You're not going to do it because of something that might happen in the future. It's like, I'm not going to drink this water because eventually my water bottle will eventually be empty. And it's like, well, yeah, but then you never drink the water. So might as well drink the water and see what happens. I think that a lot of people feel like if they make a choice, then that's it forever. They're committed to that forever, which is very strange because nothing is forever. Everything changes constantly. And so I see this a lot with sexuality when I work with people on, discovering their own sexuality. They'll be so afraid to commit to some sort of label because they're like, well, but if I say I'm gay, then I'm committed to that. And I'm like, why? You could say you're gay today and bi tomorrow. It doesn't matter. Like you get to choose whatever you want. And sure, there may be people that judge you for that, but those are the kind of people that you don't want around anyway. And so it's nice to actually like expedite the process.
And consistency with uncomfortable things is usually what allows you to build whatever engine you're trying to build to get you to freedom. Maybe you are one of the 70-something% people in our audience that wants to start a business or a side hustle to get to financial freedom. Maybe you just want to progress in your career so you can be good enough to negotiate some flexibility and like work part-time or whatever your version of like living life on your own terms is, which seems to be the desire of most of my audience and also me. But almost all of that is on the other side of a sustainably consistent amount of doing shit that you don't necessarily want to do in the moment. And just because you don't feel like doing it in the moment doesn't mean you don't have to do it at all. Something I talk about in the book, 5-minute rule. You might be familiar with the 5-minute rule. Set a timer for yourself and tell yourself you're just going to do it for 5 minutes. I do this sometimes for my YouTube videos where I don't feel like doing it. I hit record and I'm like, cool, I'm only going to do this for 5 minutes. And then usually about 85-90% of the time,
This is doing two things, by the way, just to dig into this a little bit. The first is that it is using willpower. So you're overcoming inertia to get yourself into the thing. And then once you have the flow, you're good. And the other thing is it is also giving yourself an opportunity to show yourself that it's okay. That when you are really afraid to do the thing and you start doing the thing just for 5 minutes, it's a low enough barrier that the part of you that is fighting against you is like, okay, I guess we can try it. And so you try it, and then they're like, oh, this is okay. This isn't so bad. It's like, going on a kid going on a roller coaster for the first time, and then they end up having fun. Same kind of idea.
A lot of accountability buddies, commitment devices, putting money on the line, a lot of this sort of stuff, like having friends who are doing the thing. Really, the key value of having friends doing the thing is that it gives you a nudge to do the thing when you don't feel like it. No one needs accountability to do something that they feel like doing. No one needs discipline to do things that are inherently enjoyable. I would say, actually, making YouTube videos is inherently enjoyable. I found a way to enjoy the process. It's actually quite fun. But because it's an act of...
The other thing that I think having a community of people that help you to do a thing is that it helps make you feel safer because you have support, right? So much of our, like the core experience of our emotionality is about safety or unsafety. So when we feel unsafe, we don't want to do things. And when we feel safe, we want to do things. And so by having people there supporting you, saying, hey, you can do it. Hey, I support you. Hey, it's going to be okay. It makes it so much easier to do the thing because you feel safe.
There's something that comes up in generally sort of later in marriages, which is that one party wants to have intimacy time with the other party, but they are afraid of rejection, and so they don't initiate it. Now, most of us can probably agree that the intimacy thing is quite fun, right? Most of us would enjoy the process of doing the intimacy thing. But just because the thing is fun doesn't mean it's not scary to initiate it. It can be really, really scary to initiate the thing because it requires putting your heart out there, that moment of vulnerability, and being okay with being rejected, being okay with someone laughing at you, being okay with being said, no thank you, or I'm too tired, or not tonight, honey, or whatever the thing might be. It requires being okay with that. And that's why it's scary. I think this is how you square that circle around, again, I keep on referencing the book, man. The book, if you haven't read the book, you should check it out. There's a graph in here. Where's the graph? Bit of a dodge.
I love this. He's like, This book is really good. I give my reference. This book is fire. Oh my god. And that makes me so happy, because if he has this feeling of not feeling good enough, the fact that he is proud of his book is a beautiful thing.
And just don't force yourself to do it. But recognize that just because you feel like getting a coffee doesn't mean you have to get a coffee. Just because you don't feel like hitting record doesn't mean you don't have to hit record. Just because you don't feel like going to the gym doesn't mean you shouldn't go to the gym. The feeling is just an internal bodily sensation accompanied by narrative, and it does not need to dictate your actions. Your actions and your feelings are independent of one another, and if you create a fake bridge between the two, if you create a false narrative, a false equivalency, a false connection of I feel X, therefore I must do Y, that is where you start to act in line with your feelings. And this is all well and good when your feelings are pointing you in the direction that you actually want to go. But a lot of the times, feelings are fickle and feelings change, and feelings don't point us in the direction that we want to go.
And a lot of times the reason that our feelings don't point us in the direction that we want to go is because of the narratives that are written for us, right? They are acting on old information and being triggered based on the events that we are currently experiencing in our life to that old information. And so when we understand, oh, this feeling is being triggered because of this past narrative, and it actually doesn't align with what feels right to me now, then it becomes a whole lot easier to take the action that you actually want to take.
The trick is to be loving even in the moments you don't feel like doing it. This is actually a thing that's in a lot of these relationship books. They're in the early days of a relationship, in the honeymoon period, your feelings are going to be are going to be over the moon, and therefore your actions will often be over the moon, and then life's all great. But then the feelings start to dampen down. The hedonic treadmill happens. You start to adapt and that kind of stuff. And the trick is to do the actions even when you're not feeling the feeling.
So this is a really, really important concept. It feels a little tangential to me, but it still feels important, which is that this is a really important concept in relationships in general, which is that a lot of times people use the honeymoon phase, the endorphins of the beginning of a relationship, to carry them through a relationship. And so then what ends up happening is that once the honeymoon phase ends, there is no foundation for the relationship to continue to exist on. And so what is really, really important is while you are in that honeymoon phase, while you have all those endorphins helping you out, using those endorphins to practice to help you get over the hump of vulnerability in order to learn your partner's toolbox, the things that please your partner, the things that make your partner happy, and educate them about your own toolbox, the things that make you happy and make you feel good, so that when those endorphins run out, there is this toolbox that you each have for one another that is the foundation of your relationship, that helps you to continue to be happy and please one another within the relationship.
The trick is, even when you're not feeling that connected to the wife because you had an argument or something, but you notice that flower shop on the way home from work, you're like, you know what? I'm going to buy the flowers anyway, as a sign that I love her. And I don't need to be feeling the feeling in order to buy the flowers. I do not need to feel the feeling in order to do the action.
And that comes back to the why, right? If you know that your why is, I want to buy these flowers for her, even though I don't necessarily feel like stopping at the flower shop right now, because I love her and because of the impact that she has on my life and how important she is to me, it becomes much easier to do the thing.
So what's the overall message here? I don't know what the overall message is. I just hit record and I was like, I feel like there's something I want to get off my chest here, because this is the thing that holds people back.
I think in Ali Abdaal, in case you ever watch this, I don't think you will, but in case you ever watch this, I just want to say that I think that there was something incredibly valuable here, and it makes me so happy to see you exploring your own journey in mental health in this way. And I'm very glad that you hit record, even though you didn't want to. And that's my cat. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope that it was helpful, and I hope you enjoy. Bye.